Hello, everyone. Welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. You're listening to the Going Solo Life After Relationship Loss. And those of you that are out there, you kind of know what this is like. And so we want you to gravitate towards these wonderful shows that we're giving you some of these terrific guests that are sharing not only their journeys, but also some great information that will help move you through to the other side. Those of you that don't know me, I am Cece Schatz. I'm the doyenne of relationship building, and I am also the founder of the Going Solo Network. All of our great shows and guests you can find right there on goingsolomedia.com. We've got an array of wonderful shows for you, wonderful hosts that each week share their journey and their advice with you. And then we also have these great guests, and we've got one today, so we don't want to mess around. We want to get right to it. Those of you, we're going to talk to, let's bring her right forward, make sure we have all the information here. We're going to talk about financial dignity after divorce with our elite guest, Christine Luken. She's a financial advisor. We're going to talk about financial dignity. She's a coach. She really helps move people through. She is the founder of Financial Dignity Movement. Christine has coached hundreds of high-earning professionals, business owners, and divorcing women to pay off their staggering amount of debt, which we all know and I totally experienced, and then help them increase their net worth. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about moving forward as you move forward in relationship loss, and then also how it will help you. But she is also the founder, and I want to make sure the author of 3 great books. She hosts the Money is Emotional podcast, and Christine blends wise money management with an emotional intelligence. So saying all that, let's get on with it, right?
Well, thanks so much for having me. And I do just need to clarify, I'm not a financial planner, so I don't do
Okay.
anything with investments. I'm a financial coach. So.
Okay, thank you for letting us know that. Well, you're also the founder of the Seven Pillars LLC. So if anyone's
Yes.
ever heard of that, you are also the founder of that. So
Yes.
thanks for clarifying that, because that's important for us to know. I see my little dog; she's having a little gate time over there, but anyhow, she decided to join us. Normally, she sleeps through everything, but this is such an important topic, Christine. Our finances as we go
Yes.
through a relationship loss, whether it be by death or by divorce, it can
Hmm.
be extremely stressful for individuals. And so, tell me a little bit about why you decided that you wanted to be a financial coach and helping people through this, and a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I always make sure to tell people I don't do this because I've always done it perfectly. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So I crashed and burned in my mid 20s, despite actually having an accounting degree. And a big part of it was because of the relationship that I was in. So my ex fiance was quite terrible with money. He was in and out of jobs and even in and out of jail, and I just thought if I loved him enough he was going to change. But actually he got worse. He did change. He got worse. He didn't get better. And so I found myself at age 26 with no money. My bank accounts were negative. My credit score was shot. I had a lot of debt. I owed 3 different payday lenders money. I wanted to leave this relationship, but I literally had no money to leave. And so I had to reach out and get help from my family. And that was very hard for me. It was very humbling. And there was a lot of shame and embarrassment because I was someone who should have known better. Right? I mean, I had an accounting degree. I was working as an accountant. And so it was a definitely a learning experience, my financial recovery, because I got really curious about why do smart people do dumb things with money? Because I was someone who was always on the honor roll. I mean, I loved math. Math was one of my favorite subjects. And yet here I was in debt, upside down. with my finances ruined because of this relationship. And, I started studying about the emotional side of money and behavioral finance. And, this was back in the early 2000s where people were not talking about things like behavioral finance or money mindset. It was just this very formulaic type of thing where it's like, well, you just need to spend less and save more and then you'll be fine. Right. And I realized that doesn't always work
Right.
because there are things that can trigger our emotions and that can cause us to do things that go against our common sense when it comes to money.
Mhm.
And that's really what got me into the coaching because, you know, the other piece of it was I didn't realize how much stress I was under until I was out from under it. I mean, I distinctly remember the moment when I was driving to work about a year after I left that relationship, and the thought struck me, I'm not worried about money. And that was like a huge shock to me because for the previous 7 years, that's all I did was worry about money constantly. It was ever present. I mean, sometimes it was like high levels of anxiety, sometimes it was low level, but it never really went away. And that's when I thought, oh my gosh, there's probably like a bunch of people out there who are going through the same kinds of things and they don't even realize that there's another way to do this.
Yeah, that is great. I tell you, I experienced the same thing at age 50. And it's
Mm,
like, how, and I kept thinking to myself, how am I going to possibly recover being in such debt? I
yeah.
mean, it was tremendous. Basically, I was set up, and it was really a difficult thing. And I found myself, and I know you hear this over and over again. I found myself just putting my head in the sand,
Yes.
pretending, oh, things will get better tomorrow. Things will get better next week. Things will get better. But the reality is it didn't get better until I
No.
started working on it, till I
Yes.
started understanding where my life was and being able to move forward. So let's talk a little bit about that. And again, those of you out there, we want to make sure that we say nothing discussed today constitute legal or financial advice. Should you seek legal advice, consult an attorney or financial advisor. So just so that you know, Christine is a coach, but we want to try to help you and really, give you the confidence to be able to move forward in your life. So that's what we're
Yeah.
going to do today. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit like, how do we start? Okay, we see ourselves, we see the walls crumbling down, right?
Hmm.
In our financial environment. How do we even begin to start pulling ourselves back up?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is to remember that money is emotional and we can't separate it completely. In fact, science has proven that the moment of decision happens in the same part of our brain that processes emotion. So I think just being aware of the emotions that we're experiencing as we're going through this breakup, because I've seen people make mistakes out of anger, right? Where they do something to get revenge against their partner using money, which, when you're married, half of that money is yours anyways, right? And I use the example of this woman who, um, I mean, her anger was totally justified. Her ex-husband cheated on her with her best friend. Yes, I
Mhm.
would be very pissed off too. So when she got half of her ex-husband's 401k, this was a story that her financial planner told me because he was like, I wish I had known you like a year ago because I might have had some tools to like get her to not make this mistake. But she basically told him, I want to take 150,000 out of this retirement account and I'm going to take his money and I'm going to buy a BMW red convertible. So every time that I drop the kids off or pick them up, I'm throwing it in his face that I spent his money on this car.
Oh dear.
And so, the financial advisor tried to explain to her, well, you're going to have penalties and taxes on this money, right? And then that means that money's not going to grow for your retirement. And she just was so blinded by her anger and was insistent upon doing this. And obviously, if she wants her money, her financial advisor has to give it to her. And, when you think about that car probably cost her an extra 25 to $30,000 on top of the 50 for the taxes and the penalty. And then if we look at what if she had left it in there for the next 10, 15 or 20 years, how much money would that be? And so I always tell people your financial success is the best revenge that you can get against your ex. And so it's really important that we take care of ourselves financially. But we need to have some positive outlets for emotion. And so, if you're feeling high levels of anger, like go enroll in a kickboxing class, like go, take up jogging, like something to get that energy out of your body. And I think if we can just become more aware of what we're feeling and, think of some constructive ways to process those emotions, because unfortunately we don't teach this in schools. We don't teach emotional intelligence. We don't teach people how to tune into our bodies and really identify what we're feeling and what can we do to process those emotions in a healthy way? Because typically that's what happens is we have a really strong emotion like fear, which keeps us from moving forward, right? You talked about like putting your head in the sand.
Oh, absolutely.
I refer to that like as the deer in the headlights, right? So that can also be another scenario where people are they're overwhelmed, they're confused, or they're afraid and they don't want to face things. And those strong emotions can cause us to take actions or can put us into that inaction, right? Where our action is hiding and not doing anything. And that's not good either. So I think once we can identify like, what is that root emotion that I'm feeling and why am I feeling this? Then we can actually kind of take a deep breath and allow those emotions to subside. So one of the things that I always tell people is we don't want to make important financial decisions when our emotional volume is high, right? So when we think about our logic's kind of quiet and steady and always in the background, but our emotion, the voice of our emotions goes up and down, right? Depending on what's going on or what we're thinking about, our emotions can be really loud or they can be really soft. And so when our emotional volume is loud, it makes it hard for us to hear the voice of reason. And really the best financial decisions are made when we can hear both of those voices equally, right? We don't want to ignore our emotions. And you've probably had this experience too, where you made a decision, whether it was about money or something else, and it seemed like the right decision on paper, but you just had an off feeling about it, right? Where it was like, well, this looks good, but there's something about it that doesn't feel right. And if you went forward with a decision, you find out later on down the road what was wrong, right? You were like, oh, I should have trusted my gut. So we do need to listen to both our emotions and our logic and reason. Now, if you're someone who has come out of a relationship where the other person was handling all the finances, you may feel like, I don't have the knowledge that I need. I don't have the skills that I need to manage money. And that can be very, there can be a lot of shame around that, especially if you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, because you're thinking like, I should know this by now, right? I should know how to budget my money. I should know how to invest. But a lot of times we're not formally taught about these things.
Right.
And I jokingly say that sex and money are exactly the same. No one teaches us anything about it. We're not supposed to talk about it, but we're also supposed to be really good at it. And so therefore we've got shame and embarrassment around both of those two things.
Mhm.
And it can be intimidating out there in the financial industry because there's so much information. We don't know who we can trust. We don't know, you know, what set of financial information is good or not. And if we're leaving a relationship where our spouse was primarily handling the money and that person selected and hired the tax person that we worked with and the financial planner that we worked with and the banker that we worked with, we can almost feel like those people may not be trustworthy anymore, right? Because they're on our spouse's team, right? Like our financial planner went to college with our ex husband or wife. And so then you're faced with that whole overwhelming task of how do I find a new financial planner, right? Like I don't even know how to qualify someone or select someone or what I should even be looking for. So all of that can be extremely overwhelming. And that is the reason why I wrote my book, Financial Dignity After Divorce, because I wanted to give people a roadmap
Mhm.
on here's the things that we need to be doing. So once we understand this emotional kind of framework that we're working within, really the first thing is what you did. It was facing your finances,
Mhm.
and it was looking and seeing what's going on. How much am I earning? How much am I spending? What assets do I have? What debts do I have? And just really getting a clear picture of what is going on with your money right now.
Mhm.
And, maybe somebody's watching this and they're thinking about divorce and they haven't left the relationship yet. You know, if the D word has even been whispered, it's time to get your head in the finances.
Right, right, absolutely. A lot of times I've heard the saying that, divorce is a business, right? So you have to look at it like that and try to step
Mhm.
aside from the emotional craziness of it. But
Yeah.
it's so hard to, I think, make people understand that where you're at today is not where you're going to be at tomorrow. So if
Right.
you can just get your head out of the sand, if you can face your fears to start looking at where you are today, you can start at least stepping forward and start planning for tomorrow. Because a lot of times, they throw their hands up in the air and they're just like, oh my gosh, like you said with your life, it's like you didn't have the money. It's hard to plan for paying off debt and getting yourself turned around when you simply do not have the money,
Yeah.
and all you have is just debt. So
Mhm.
it's a and then you get that emotional, like you should have known better, you should have been able to plan better, you should have maybe not trusted so much, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So there's so many elements, I think, that goes around our money when we're moving forward in
Yeah.
in divorce. And so we have to step out of the blaming game, blaming your
Mhm.
ex, blaming yourself, and being able to really see things black and white, because your finances are pretty much black and white, aren't they?
They are and they aren't.
Oh, there you go. So
Yeah,
we
I
learned
mean,
something today.
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, yes, there are general principles that, we can say you want to be spending less money than you make. You should minimize your debt. You should be saving for the future. But there's a lot of gray areas and there's a lot of subtleties in personal finance. And that's why they call it personal finance because it's personal.
Mhm.
And what works for me might not work for you, right? Because we're in different places in our life. Like you might have kids, I might not have kids, and so it's like there's a lot of different variables, and I think that's what's so I think that's the value of having a financial coach or a even a financial planner who does some coaching as part of their financial planning practice. um, they can really help you to tune in with what's important for you. Because to me, the highest value of money is for it to support your happiness.
Mhm.
And most people have not defined what that looks like. And
Right.
so, we kind of have two things that we need in our finances, and I call it the provider money and the pleasure money. So, the provider money is, what do we need to feel safe and secure,
Mhm.
right? How much income do we need? What are the expenses that need to be covered? What are the things like the insurance and, the retirement savings?
Mhm.
Those are like our safety net.
Right. Mhm.
But in order for us to be happy, if all we have is that provider money and we never are getting any pleasure out of our money, that's boring. Right? And so we want to make sure that, even if we're going through a hard time, that we're at least allocating a few dollars to something that's pleasurable for us, that brings us joy. That's going to be different for everyone.
Mhm.
And so, when people don't understand how these two energies work together, then things can get lopsided.
Right.
And, when people, I like to say it's kind of like the trapeze. So, the provider money is like your safety net, and the pleasure money is the swinging on the trapeze. Now, we can't truly enjoy swinging on the trapeze without terror if we do not have a net. Right? And if we do not have, we want to make sure that there's a net with no holes in it, right? And so sometimes people will come to me and it's, they have high levels of anxiety, and it's like, well, yeah, I can understand you have like these huge holes here in your financial safety net. If you go and take this trip to Fiji and then you come home and you're 2 car payments behind, you're going from pleasure to complete anxiety and drama, right? Instead of flowing in between a sense of peacefulness and pleasure. Like, that's really what it's all about.
Right. Well, I totally get that, but sometimes you have to walk on the wild side a bit, and I totally get that you have to be, conservative and be smart with what you're doing and as you move forward. So I like the idea of maybe talking to, a financial coach as you're going through divorce, because
Yes.
when you start finding, like for me, there wasn't anything like this out there when I was going through mine. But when I started realizing, oh my gosh, my assets are gone. Now, what is my life going to be? What's going
Mhm.
to happen? Um, I didn't have anybody to lean on,
Yeah.
and my family was in such shock that they just didn't know. And of course, they're living their lives and they're not responsible for me, and I'm
Right.
older. And it's so, like, you start thinking to yourself, what do you do? And so then the reason I bring this up is because I really do feel that we should look at our finances as we're going through divorce, and maybe
Yeah.
we should have a coach if there's a little gray area there. There's a little iffy going on. You're not quite sure. You haven't handled
Mhm.
the finances before. You don't know anything about investments. Things aren't the way that you thought they were going to be. That's the time to step out and say, you listen, I need somebody outside of my relationship to look at this and
Mhm.
start help guiding me through. Because the reality is once you've completed the divorce process, it's difficult to be able to go back. You can't change
Yes.
some of those
No,
things.
no, no.
So,
You wanna make sure you get it right the
right.
first time,
Mhm.
absolutely. And, I love telling people that, money is like the third person in your marriage.
Mhm.
Even though you and your ex are parting ways, you and money are gonna be together forever. And
Oh, that's a
s
good
and
way to put
so,
it.
it's important that you have a good relationship with money.
Mhm.
And, and even thinking about this going forward into a new relationship, you don't want it to be one-sided, right? You don't want it to feel like that person has the relationship with money and you don't. You want to make sure that even if one person is more numbers oriented and more, likes math like I do,
Mhm.
I do handle the bulk of the day to day, week to week financial stuff. However, my husband and I talk about this stuff all the time.
Mhm.
And if something were to happen to me, he could very easily step in and know what's going on. And I think that's really what's important is that, both people have a relationship with money because many of the women, the divorcing women usually are the ones that haven't, been involved with the finances. And so a lot of times it's almost like they feel like they're sitting on one side of the couch and money sitting on the other side of the couch. And they're like, okay, like, I know I have to interact with you, but I have no idea. Like, this is so awkward. And so it's almost like they have to get reacquainted with their money and they have to start building this relationship with money. And so that's where someone like myself can come in and baby step things and say, okay, let me help you take the overwhelm away. Let me get in here and see what's going on and give you some baby steps to start the management of things, but also to start looking at the emotional aspect of things as well.
Mhm. Yeah, very good. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have to take a quick break, and this is great information. I think it's a wonderful way to be able to start progressing into your life, as you're moving forward and you're building, right? So you can start thinking about your finances, looking at them a lot more seriously, and start making a path for yourself, a plan that you want to
Yes.
do. When we come back, let's talk a little bit, Christine, about how we can start to rebuild again. Some of
Yes.
the things that we can do to be able to help others be able to move forward in that. So let's make sure that everyone knows how to get a hold of you. This information is right here. It's Christine at Christine, that's CHRISTINE, Luka, LUKEN.com. And then check out her website because it's got a lot of information on it. Easy way to get a hold of her. It's www.Christine, CHRISTINE, and then Luken, LUKEN.com. So make sure you check out our website. So thank you so much for being with us here.
Thank you.
I'm just excited to be able to bring the information forward. So we are talking with elite guest Christine Luken. She's the financial dignity coach. And we want to make sure that she is also the founder of the 7 Pillars of LLC. She's an author. She has tremendous books out there. You want to definitely check her out. It's a lot of information so that you can get and be able to really turn your life around. So we want to make sure that that she's the author of 3 books. She's the host of Money is Emotional podcast. Christine blends wise money management with emotional intelligence. And I love that. So we're going to be right back. Thank you so much, Christine. Hang on. Well, welcome back. You guys are listening to Going Solo Life After Relationship Loss. This is WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network. We are a radio, TV, and a podcast station. We're the #1 internet singles talk network, and we're really pleased to be here with you today. I am Cece Schatz, the doyenne of relationship building. All of our information you can find right there on goingsolomedia.com. All of our hosts and guests are right there with all these wonderful shows. We are talking with our special elite guest, Christine Luken. She's a financial dignity coach. We're talking about financial dignity after divorce or relationship loss. And it's a really difficult situation to be in when you're talking about your finances. Like you said, Christine, it's a very
Mhm.
personal and sometimes a very touchy, scary thing. And so we've been talking a lot about, trying to be able to get you forward, move you forward through to understanding the importance of your finances, how to go about stepping through fear to be able to grasp what you have. But we want to also share with you that Christine, she is the founder of the Seven Pillars LLC, and she has books out there, and she's also, I mean, she's got like 3 books, and you guys can find them on Amazon. So there's no reason for you to not be able to face your fears with money and being able to move through the emotional part of it, because she also has a wonderful podcast. It's called Money is Emotional Podcast. And it truly is. Money is such an emotional trigger for you. If you
Mhm.
got it, you're doing really good. You're on a high, right? And if you don't have it, you are on this tremendous low. And so she helps blend wise money management with emotional intelligence. And, as we're stepping through our life, Christy, we've been talking about this. As we're stepping through our life, we have to be aware of our finances, aware of the path that we want to take, aware of the results of what we're going to do with money, how it's going to affect us.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about the next couple of minutes of the show. Let's talk a little bit about trying to dig yourself out of the hole and get yourself back up again. And I know you have helped a tremendous amount of individuals through that.
Yeah.
Being able to step aside, pay off their staggering amounts of debt, and then also increase their net worth. So give us some little tips on increasing one's net worth.
Well, I think the first and foremost, it's really hard to build your net worth if you don't have a handle on your spending. And so, one of the very first things that I do with all of my clients, whether they're going through divorce or widowhood or whatever, is to get them set up on a personal finance app. Currently, I'm using mint.com, which is free, which is amazing. And what it does is it helps to organize and streamline your finances. Because what I found is, when you're spending on several different credit cards and you're also spending money through your checking account because you've got, you know, bill pay set up or you're spending money through your debit card, it's really hard to get a handle on what actually are you spending on all the major categories if you don't have a tool that is bringing it all together and helping you classify it. So that's the first thing that we do is we get them set up. And for my one-on-one coaching clients, I actually do this for them. And I find a lot of times when people haven't handled money by themselves, that part of it is very intimidating, just setting up the app. So, if someone's like, well, hey, I don't think I could even afford financial coaching, um, you've probably got someone in your life who's a numbers nerd or a money nerd, and they would probably love it if you asked them to set this up for you. Maybe you could just buy them lunch or make them dinner or do something nice for them, babysit their kids, and they would probably be delighted to set this up for you because then you can start to see what are you spending in the different categories, and this really shifts your spending from being mindless to being mindful. And just the awareness of where all the money is going, it naturally leads into you making better choices, right? So if you can see, like, oh my gosh, I'm being charged for 5 streaming services and I only watch 2 of them, all of a sudden it's like, oh, now it's obvious what I need to do. Like, I don't watch these three. I need to cancel them. Um, and even just being aware of how much you're spending in certain categories, it can cause you to think twice in the moment, right? So if you like really overspent on clothing last month, when you're out shopping, you can be like, oh my God, I like totally spent way too much money last month. Maybe I should put some of these things back. Right. So, really getting a handle on your spending is the first and most important thing that people need to do.
Mhm.
And then just setting these regular rhythms of spending time managing your finances and using an app like Mint can really streamline it and make sure that it's not super time consuming. Way back in the day, I was using spreadsheets with people. So they'd basically have to report back to me how much money they spent. I mean, can you imagine how many hours that took for them to calculate how much they actually spent on all these categories? And so now it's like, hey, if we can leverage technology, that's awesome. So I encourage people to have what I call a weekly date with money. Right. So this is kind of plugging into that whole metaphor that I was talking about, that you have a relationship with your money. And no, it doesn't have to be on Friday night. You don't have to, dress up and have it by candlelight, but, it should be a pleasant experience, a time when you're not exhausted or stressed
Mhm.
out. So for me, I usually do it on Saturday mornings after I've had some coffee, and, I'll put on some relaxing music, and maybe I will light a candle or have some essential oils diffusing, and have a nice steamy cup of coffee. And it takes me maybe 10 or 15 minutes to just go in and check my accounts, make sure all the bills are paid, and check on my spending versus my targets,
Right.
because what you focus on improves, and that's really important for people to remember.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, can you pay bills out of mint.com too, or no?
I don't know. I always do them through my bank. It actually does remind you though, which is kind of
Okay.
nice. Like, it'll be like, "Hey, this bill's coming up." So it is nice because it does bring everything all together. You can also set up goals for savings. You can say like, "Hey, I want to save $2,000 for vacation." So it'll allow you to set up that goal and say, hey, when do you need that money by? And it'll tell you, okay, well, if you want to go by this date, this is how much you need to be saving every month.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I
that's
mean,
cool.
I did, I know that most people might not know that I did, my ex and I owned an accounting firm at one time, and so
Ah,
I did bookkeeping, and so I
yeah.
used to do QuickBooks and
Yep.
did it all on QuickBooks all the time. I
Hmm.
really managed it. It was like, I was so tired of seeing it in the negative, it's like, "Oh my God." But yeah,
Uh,
so it's, but it did keep me in check, so
hmm.
I didn't go out and spend, extra money on anything else. And sometimes if I did, I did, and then, I lived through it. But, it's important to watch your money. It's important. It's just like calories, right? Calorie counting or watching your
I was
food,
just
what
gonna
you
say
eat.
that.
There's
Yeah.
so
Well,
many
and
things we have to watch.
Well, and it's not about perfection.
Hmm.
So I say that there's no financial keto in my world. So this isn't about being extreme. We don't have to give up all the fun stuff, but it's more like the Mediterranean diet, right? Like, if we can eat the healthy fruits and vegetables and lean proteins, like, but we still have room for some dark chocolate and some wine in there, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
what I find is that if we can get 80 to 90% of our finances in the good healthy range, then we can afford to have some splurges. And no one does this perfectly,
Mhm.
right? And it's not even about that. It's about balancing having some fun, but also making sure we're doing the healthy things so that we're not in a state of constant anxiety about the
Yeah.
finances.
I think this is great. I love the idea of, doing like mint.com or something like that, because a lot of times, because we are now in a world where we pay things and it comes at different times. It used to be like you'd sit down at the beginning of the month when you got paid or whatever, or every payday you got paid and you pay X amount of bills and whatever. And you
Right.
seem to have more control of when it's going out.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, my voice. When it's going out. But now it's like everything kind of, you might have signed up for something, and next thing you know, it's coming out of your pay. You're coming out of your money. You're going like, wait a minute. So,
Right. Well, especially when we've got like all the Amazon transactions and the PayPal and the Venmo and
mhm.
then you've got all like the Apple iTunes that's coming through all the apps that you ordered and it's like, what is all this stuff?
That's right. That's right. And I know that, I mean, just as an example for those out there, my son and I are on the same Amazon account, and we were both paying for the Prime.
Oh
Both
no.
it was coming out of both of our accounts, and so when we sat down one day, we were talking about it, and my son said, Mom, I'm not going to pay for the Prime anymore. I said, what do you mean? I'm paying for the Prime. And so it's like, yeah. So you don't realize these things unless you really sit down and start going over them. So it's very,
Yeah.
very important. I think you are wonderful. And
Thank
I'm,
you.
I'm so pleased that you are one of our elites. I know that we're going to have you back on again and talk about some various different saving tips and things like that. I would love to be able to, and I know some of the other hosts would love to have you on their shows too. You're marvelous. Thank you so much for being with us here today. The time has flown. It's absolutely flown. And I've enjoyed it because I think we all have to, no matter where we're at in our finances, we all have to continue to keep looking at it, planning for it, set goals for ourselves, reward ourselves when we can, and really keep a smart, emotional list. I would say less. get over the emotional part of it, and just really keep our eye on our finances. So
Yeah.
I think this is wonderful. So financial dignity, I think, is something that we can have even after divorce. We can have it all the time,
Yes.
and not be afraid of finances. So I want to thank you
Absolutely.
so much. Is there any last words you'd like to share with our audience?
Um, well, I think I would just say, you know what, you can feel anxiety no matter how much money you have, right? It's not just a matter of, oh, I'm going to make more money and my anxiety is going to go away. It's really about making peace with your emotions and understanding what those unique emotional money triggers are for you and learning how to process those emotions in a healthy way so that you can have a healthy relationship with money for the long term.
Well, I couldn't have said it any better. That was wonderful, wonderful words. And we want to make sure, again, share with us, the audience, how they can get a hold of you, Christine.
Yeah, the easiest way is to hop over to my website, which is my name, ChristineLuken.com. Obviously, they can shoot me an email. I'm also on all the major social media platforms. If you just search my name, I will pop right up there. And definitely subscribe to the Money is Emotional podcast that is on all the major platforms. And there's some really good, juicy stuff on there.
Oh, I know. It's absolutely great. And run out to Amazon and purchase her books, because I think that's important for us to, fill our well. You hear me say that all the time. We have to continue filling our well and making sure that we are, up to date on things. We know things, we read things. We need to learn in various different facets. So reading, watching, listening is all very, very important. So Christine blends wise money management with emotional intelligence, and you can get that on her podcast, which is Money is Emotional Podcast. Just run out to her website, sign up for it, and make sure that you guys are really in touch with your financial dignity, and that's very, very important. So thank you, Christine. I appreciate it.
Thanks. I had fun.
Oh, this is great. Well, everyone, you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This was Going Solo, Life After Relationship Loss. And make sure you check back with us, because these are great shows. We hope that you enjoyed it as much as we do. I am Cece, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.